Hello everyone, my name is Daniel and I'm a programmer and an artist, and today we're going to continue with the series on modeling a cannon. Yesterday we modeled the barrel using a spin modifier, and that was pretty simple. Today we're going to model the carriage, or the frame of the carriage anyway, and which should also be fairly easy, but slightly more complicated than the barrel. To start with, I just want to make sure that my references are set up correctly, so we'll go ahead and add a cube in here, and we will just resize it so that one side of the cube runs through the center of the axle, and then the other side goes to the end of the cannon here. And then I'm going to make it so I can edit my references, and I'm going to rotate these 90 degrees on the x-axis and move them up so that they align with 0. And then we can see they're actually different sizes, so I'm going to move this back until it lines up with the cube. Put the 3D cursor there, scale around the 3D cursor till that lines up, and then we'll pull it back down again. That should be close enough for what we're doing for that to work. So then we can delete that cube and make it so we can no longer select the reference. Then to start with, the first thing I want to do is just put in a shape to be this beam that's the main sort of frame of the cannon. So we'll put the 3D cursor right on the axle. We'll add a plane. We'll go into edit mode and rotate it 90 degrees on the x-axis so that it's facing us. Scale it down so it's approximately the right size. Just move this around. We'll line this up with the corners. We'll add a loop and line it on here. Model this little bevel. Then we can add cut here, line this up. We'll do 2 more here, something like this. And we'll call that good enough for the profile. To some extent, how accurate you get with this depends on how you're going to use the final model. If you're going to be doing close-ups, you might want to go into more detail. I know you're only ever going to see it from about so far away. Or this is the closest you'll be seeing up. The way I want to use the model, the closest you'll be seeing it is probably something like this. And so I don't need to get super detailed with a lot of this stuff. So just keep that in mind. If you have a final use for it that needs to be more detailed, you might need to add more detail than I am. Then what I want to do is we can go ahead and move this over and extrude it out so it has some thickness. If we move this right here, we can place a 3D cursor there and then rotate this so that we get, if we rotate around the 3D cursor, then we can rotate this so that it lines up with that angle. And then we need to add a mirror modifier. I'm going to mirror on the y-axis. And then if we edit the origin point, we can move the origin until the mirrored half lines up with the drawing. And then we can turn origin mode off. So that's a good base that we can start with. Let's go ahead and put a material on there. And then we can go into edit mode. Let's select all of this and grow it by 1. And then we can hide that. If we then unwrap and unhide it, we can do seams from the UV islands, which will add a loop around there. And then if we just select these corners and mark them as seams, that should be a pretty good unwrap. Let's scale it up so that the wood grain's a little bit smaller. All right, next I just want to add some of these support beams that go in between these two, I don't know what you would call them, I guess like legs of the carriage. So to do that, we'll just snap the cursor to this object so that it's centered, and we'll add a cube. We can select our material and scale it down. And then we'll just scale it on Y till it's wide enough. And we can turn on correct face attributes so that the UVs stay the same. And we can scale it down, the UV, so that the scale sort of matches. Then this here, I don't know where it goes exactly, but maybe here. Make a copy of that. And then this one, I think, let's rotate it so that it lines up. Then there's another one right here. So we'll scale that like so. Let's keep this one flat. Maybe it goes like this, and we'll put this one over here. So they would use wedges to adjust the angle of the barrel, and I think those rest on these. So then we don't actually need the faces in here because they're going to be inside. So we'll delete those. This here, I think, is like a box of some sort. So let's make a copy of this. And we'll snap it there. Let's see. And then we'll add a loop cut. Maybe let's pull all of this down a little bit so that that's, pull this down too, to like here, just so that this vertex is below the level of the beam. And then we'll bring all of this up and bring this down so that it runs parallel. And then let's select this face here and separate it, and we'll extrude it down like this and just make it be like the lid to the box. Let's then grab these vertices and pull that down. And that way, if we want to, I guess too, we could select this face, deselect this, and pull it back a little bit, and extrude this down in case we want to see that. Or maybe it would be better just to put it like this. Again, the level of detail at which you model stuff kind of depends on how close you're going to be seeing it. If you're going to have that box open and see inside of it, you need to do more. But for what I'm doing, it's probably not going to be open, so we can leave it pretty low resolution. All right, now I need to make some of these metal parts. I think first there's like this metal protective band that wraps around the outside of the wood where it touches the ground and stuff. And I think the easiest way to do that is going to be to select this loop on the outside of the support beam, invert it, and then just do an inset about so much. And then here we can add an extra loop. Well, hang on, let's undo that. And we'll just make a copy of this, because this might be our low poly that we use, and then this could be only in the high poly, because we probably don't need this geometry once it's baked to a texture. But let's do an inset, and then we can add an extra loop cut here. We can select these vertices and slide them to right here where we can see on the drawing that that thicker black line starts. And then if we select all of this and then deselect all of this, we can add a second material as the metal and assign it to those faces, which gets us this. And then on the front here, we have the same thing. It looks like it goes all the way to here, which happens to line up pretty nicely. Let's add a second loop right here, because we're going to need to cut out this space here anyway. We'll add a second one, pull it down. Then let's just adjust this. We'll slide it over here, line this up. And this is a case where I don't know exactly what it would look like, so we're just going for something that's kind of the right idea. And we'll assign that to the metal. All right, then there's some other metal pieces that we should make separate. So let's add a plane. And we'll snap that to the same location as this. Rotate it 90 degrees on X. Scale it down. Then let's create some parts. So just somewhere over here, we'll add a UV sphere. And then we can snap that to the grid. Let's shade it smooth, and we'll give it a metal material. And then we can delete the bottom of it. Maybe scale it down just ever so slightly. Let's unwrap it. All right, so this is going to be like a bolt head, sort of an idea. And then let's make another one. Let's add a circle. Let's give it 8 points. It looks to me like these, whatever these bolts sort of deals are kind of like octagonal in shape, maybe. So we'll add a circle with 8 points. Let's move this over 1. Actually, let's put this over here. Scale it down. Go to local coordinates. Merge at center. Unwrap that. We'll give it the metal texture. Clear the scale, clear the rotation, and we'll put it back over here. We could add a bevel to this. So, all right, let's scale these down even more. And let's move this one. Make sure the origin's below the, unwrap it again and turn off the correct face attributes because I just messed up the UVs. All right, then let's go ahead and move these to collections. So we'll do Control G, which is the old group command. And we'll name this collection Bolt 1. We'll group this one, call it Bolt 2. Then we can go to this plane here. We can add an instance on faces, modifier, and select the bolt. And then we can add a shrink wrap, or we could add a face project, which are kind of similar to this object. And then if we put this here, then we can place several of these on there. And then we can add a mirror modifier. We want to mirror around this on the y-axis. We want to realize. Let's go to instance on faces, and we will add a realize instances at the end here, which will let us mirror it. Let's make a copy of that, and instead of the bolt 1, we'll do bolt 2. And I'm going to put one of these here, and we'll put one here, and we'll put one here, and let's put some over here. We can switch to individual origins and scale these down a bit, like so. All right, we have some hinges here, so let's make a copy of this. We'll snap it to the location of this. We want to add a mirror on the y-axis. And then let's just delete all of this and add a face or a plane. And we can make something similar to this sort of hinge shape. And then let's go into material view, and we can line this up with our box because it doesn't quite match the drawing. So we'll put this edge right over where the angle changes. And then let's add a shrink wrap. We'll select the box here. We can have it go to project mode, and we can do negative as well. It should be good. And then we can add a solidify. We want only the rim, even thickness. We want a positive offset. And we can play with how thick we want that to be. Then let's make this come back a little further. Maybe add a little detail to that. We can unwrap this. And then we could come in here. Rotate that all the way around. Put a couple of these in. So I guess then let's move we'll group this as a collection, and we'll call it Carriage. And then instead of snapping to the plane object, we'll snap to the Carriage collection. All right, then we have this piece here. So let's make a copy of this. We'll move it over here. Rotate it 180 degrees. And let's delete all but 2 of these. Should go from like here to here. And we can make this a little bit thicker. And I imagine this goes around the axle. So we'll probably want to add that detail in eventually. For now, we'll just scale this up like so, and we'll turn off only rim on this one so that it has a back face. I'm trying to make it just ever so slightly stick out on either side. So then I imagine in the middle of this here would be, we switch to normal mode, something like this. But we can finish that later. Then there's let's make another copy of that. And let's get rid of the shrink wrap as well, because I don't really need that on that one. This one, rotate it 180 degrees so it's pointing up. Let's actually, is this over top? Snap this to the cursor. Let's add a circle. Rotate it 90, and we'll put it right here. And then let's extrude that out. I think the mirror has clipping. No. What is going on? Global mode. Scale this on Y. Flip the normals. And then let's shear this on Y to get that angle. And then we can put a seam in here. Unwrap that. Shade smooth. Then on this one here, let's take this edge right here, and we'll make a copy of it. And then let's extrude it up. Select it all, flip the normals. I think this goes to right here. Move this over here. Select it all, flip the normals. We'll unwrap this, scale it down on Y. So then here, this sort of bolt seems to hold it down. I think what we want to do is do an inset. Let's turn off the solidify for a second, hide everything else. We'll slide this up, slide this down, delete this face. Makes the normals kind of bad, but we'll have to live with that, I guess. Select this, shear on Y, turn off the individual origins, shear it on Y, so that it lines up. Then let's add this bolt deal here. So we can add a torus, I guess. And let's do 12 by 8. The radius way down. Something like this. Let's give it the metal material. Just try to size it correctly. We'll put it right here. We'll shear it on Y a tiny bit. And then we'll add a mirror modifier. We'll shade it smooth. We'll select one of these as the mirror origin. We want a mirror on Y. You're never going to see this, so let's delete these faces. Let's add a seam. Let's unwrap it. And then let's make a copy of it for right here. Straighten this out a little bit. And then snap the cursor to that. We'll add a cylinder. Let's do 12 rotated on X. Scale it down. Something like that. We can mark some seams on this. Poke those faces. Mark seam. Unwrap that. Scale that down. Actually, I don't like the stretching on this, so I'm going to apply the solidify to that. And let's mark seams here, mark seam there, delete this face, select these seams, mark those, and then I guess we should mark. There we go. Why didn't that work? Delete all of these bottom faces, and then we will unwrap it. That looks better. All right. Then, now that we got that there, we could make a piece for this. So, let's make a copy of this, and we'll make it flatter. Something like that. Let's unwrap it again. And we'll group this and put it in bolt 3. Let's make a copy of this and change the modifier to use bolt 3. Then delete everything. Rotate this 180 degrees and we'll put it down here. We want to use the collection that was Carriage. Move this, add to collection Carriage. Use that here. So we should also make sure these are all centered, roughly centered. All right, then on this one, I want to put another one over here. Actually, let's put some more in. Let's put some under here. Maybe like this. And then we will put another one up here. Let's add these straps in. So I think the way I want to add the straps is with I'm going to make a little boolean tool to do that. So let's add a cube. Go to modifiers, add a new geometry nodes. Let's add in an object info, and we can select our carriage object. Let's do a boolean. We want to make sure we put a material on this that's different. So make a new material and call it boolean. Doesn't matter what it looks like. Oops. Then we wanted to use the intersect mode, and we want to just plug both of these in here. We want to use the relative object. So you can see that gets us this right here. And you can see we get the original red material in the new faces that were created, but we have the old material, or the copied material from the carriage object everywhere else. So then we can do a delete geometry. We want to delete the faces, and we want to delete where the material index equals 0. And that gets us this result here. Then we can set the material to, well, we want to set it to metal, so we'll do that. And we want to make sure it's shaded smooth, so we can do that as well. All right, let's bring everything back. Then we can just add a solidify on top of that. And we can do only the rim. We want even thickness. It should be a positive offset. And we can apply the scale. Play with how thick we want that to be. We can put one of these right here for that metal band. Just line it up like so. Let's go to normal and pull this in a little bit. Just rotate this slightly. And then let's add a mirror modifier. And we'll mirror on Y, centered on this. Let's add a cube in here. What is that? Okay, we'll add a cube, move only the cube. I don't know how I moved I guess I selected everything somehow. We'll make this size. We can scale this on Y. And then if we wanted to, we could select these two edges here and bevel them. So. And then we have a strap that goes right here, so select this piece here, rotate it like this, and extrude. We'll go to the normal edit mode, pull this so it's narrower, and we'll just line this up right here. Then let's add this to the collection of the carriage. And that'll pop all of our bolts out so that they sit on top of these. Let's scale this one down so that it fits on it nicer. Scale this one down. All right, and then we have one final piece right here. Can make a copy of his face and put it right here. We'll stay away from that bolt there. Well, we can always move it. Then let's just sort of make this shape roughly. This is getting kind of laggy now, so if it gets laggy, you can turn off the boolean. All right, what else have we got? We have these sort of hooks. So for that, let's just model it, I guess. So we will add a plane. We'll make it the metal. Rotate it on X. Let's go back to global. Take this 90 degrees. Something like this. Then we'll just match the shape of this. That, unwrap it. Let's extrude it. Actually, let's do a little bit of an inset and then we'll pull it out. Which does two things. There's no back face to it, and we get a slight angle on the edges. Shade this smooth. And then we'll pull it back here. Let's actually do a little bit of a shear on Y. And then we'll put it right here. And let's add this to the collection carriage. And then let's move this like this. And then we're going to add a mirror to this. And we can select this on the y-axis. And then for this hook shape, let's go here and add a curve, or a Bezier curve. We'll give it a little bit of a bevel. Do automatic for now. Let's, we want to change how many segments this has to like 2, something much smaller. This needs to come over here. Pull all of this out here. I'm actually going to hide the reference. And now I'm just going to make this, try to make the shape of this something nice. Pull this all out a little bit. Do something like that. Then let's convert this to a mesh, and we can put a material on it, shade it smooth. I want to scale this on the y-axis. We can put a face on this. Let's do a bevel here. Scale this up some. Rotate this slightly. I'm just trying to make the profile of this kind of flow. Something like that. And then there's another one of these on the front. Let's bring back the reference. We'll make a copy of this, scale it -1 on X. What in the world happened? I guess I extruded at some point. Scale X -1. Put one of these right here. And then let's make a, well, yeah, let's make a duplicate of this. Do an inset, and we'll drag this back. We'll unwrap it, and then pull it all the way back. And then, where's my, let's pull this all the way back as well. Let's move the origin of this so that it lines up with the origin, then we can scale it down a little bit. Let's add this to the collection of the carriage, and let's make a copy of this and put it on that. Then we have these rings, so let's model one of those. We will add a torus, we'll make it metal, shrink it down, like so. Let's select this loop, snap the cursor to it, we'll add another torus. This time let's do 8 and 6. Shrink it down, scale it on X a little bit. Let's pull this out. Let's mark a seam. Mark a seam, and then we'll mark a seam here. Come on, mark a seam there. We'll hide this and mark a seam right here. I can unwrap. Then we'll snap the cursor here. Let's add a circle. Unwrap that. Delete these faces. Let's move this all so that it's centered on the origin. Unwrap that again. Okay, let's add a mirror around this on the y-axis. Put another one over here. We'll rotate it so that it lines up. And then we need one here. Let's put it here. Get rid of the mirror on this one. Did I ever put that? We never put that piece in. Did I ever unwrap these? I don't think I did. We'll mark some seams on these. Rotate the UV so that the wood grain runs the right direction. Scale this on Y. And pull this up. And then I'll place this right here. And let's see, make another one right here. All right, and I think that about covers it for what I want to get done in this video. Obviously, if you get close, it's not very detailed. And I will, before we bake it, when we make sure the high poly version of this looks nice, we'll add bevels and stuff, which will fix the weird sort of shading glitches from the smooth normals. I guess one final thing we could do before we could add an origin to this. So let's make a copy of this and apply the modifier. Snap the origin to the geometry, snap the cursor to that, and then we could add an empty. I really wish in the add menu that if you typed in curve, you would get the Bezier curve, and if you typed in empty, you would get the normal empty, because I never think to type in plain axis or whatever. All right, let's move this to the, well, we don't really need it to be copied, so that's fine. So this is going to be our origin point. We're going to add a collection to object node, so let's just add a cube or something. Add a collection to object modifier. We want to do the barrel. And we want the origin object to be this empty we just added. And we can realize that or not, it doesn't really matter. Then let's snap this to the same point as the carriage. And we'll scale it down so that the size of it is just right. And then we'll place this right here. Like so. And then I think this gun is supposed to be longer. Like, I'm pretty sure it should like come from here to here, but we'll figure that out later on. So that's where we've got so far. We will probably continue either with the wheel or the axle in the next video. Anyway, that's all I got for this one. Thanks for watching.